So today we want you to get to know Lynnwood A. Bibbens. So Lynnwood Bibbens is a serial entrepreneur and the CEO and co-founder of Reach TV. Lynnwood is a deal maker, a visionary, content producer, and has built businesses worth billions of dollars. And just as important, perhaps more important, is the fact that Lynnwood is a tireless champion of diversity and inclusion at the very highest levels. I personally see Lynnwood as a man who's peeked behind the curtain, knows how the system works, but has been very willing to bring that knowledge back into the community to lift others. Lynnwood, thank you for joining us today.
Oh yeah, pleasure being here.
Fantastic. So without further ado, I really want to kind of get stuck into it and kind of throw it over to you a bit. And I think the first thing I want the audience to understand a little bit more about is Reach TV. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about Reach TV and what it does?
Yeah, Reach TV is an entertainment network. We launched the network with a goal of focusing on one audience, which is our tastemaker audience of world travelers. Reach TV is the first network to launch on a linear side with all short form content. And we did that because of the attention span and certain ways that our audience consumes when they're on the go. So we were excited about doing that. And so we're an entertainment network, first off. We focus on the tastemaker audience, second off, and we use our own technology to be able to program it from a national, by DMA, by airport, by terminal, by screen basis. So we're pretty good on from ingest to delivery.
That's amazing. And people see you now, you're a successful entrepreneur. You've exited companies. And I think my main thing is I want other people to know that they can do it too. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about your background and what led you to becoming an entrepreneur. You know, what were the milestones? What things made a difference to you?
You know, I grew up in very humble and grew up with a family of, you know, we used to say everybody was hustling. Now everybody calls it a side hustle, but when we grew up, it was just life. And so my grandfather was like my hero in life. Had his own garbage route. So he would work 9 to 5, then come home at night, and we would have to jump on the back of his truck and pick up these routes. And then he taught me how to run the books for that, and why it was important to do all that. And I was young. I was, 9, 10, 11, 12. At the time, annoyed. But, now looking back on life, like, thank God I had that background and that foundation in our family. And my uncles at a seafood shop. And I mean, we kind of, everybody had something that they were doing and trying to find a way to make it and build a better life for our next generation in our family.
That's really important because although you had humble beginnings, you could see things around you and maybe you didn't even know because that was what you knew. That was just life in general. But you think that's an important thing in becoming an entrepreneur is kind of knowing it's possible and seeing it around you with your own eyes?
I think the breakthrough moment for me was in college. Everybody goes to college, you got to come out, you got to get that summer job, and you see the sign that says $12 an hour. You're like, all right. Back then, when I'm aging myself, $12 was a lot. That was way more than what you would get normally starting off for a summer job. So I had to go see what this was about. And it ended up being Cutco knives. And everybody used to laugh and call me the Ginsu man and all this. But what I learned was that people, didn't matter what they look like, where they're from. When you're selling Cutco knives, what happens is you're really selling yourself, and you're learning about different people and how to talk to people. I never went and talked to kids I went to high school's parents before, and now to this day, I'm friends with their parents as much as I'm friends with them, all from the Cutco knife experience. And the funny part is you learn business. So I can tell you right now, 25 years later, my average sale was $383. My average appointment was 87 minutes, and my closing ratio was 93%. Anybody who sold Cutco knives, it helped me know I wanted to work for myself, looking at the money I was making them, and was able to make. So it was a really eye-opening experience. Because prior to that, I was thinking I was going to be an accountant.
Okay.
And after that, that was gone. I was not going to be an accountant. I knew I could work with people better than I needed to be more involved and run the ship a little bit.
Wow. Great story. And so tell me what then, obviously you did a whole bunch of stuff before Reach TV. But what led to the idea of Reach TV? And what do you hope to accomplish from it?
So I came from a computer background, computers and consumer electronics. And then as I went through life and did a bunch of different things, right before Reach TV, the last couple of years, I was focused on digital signage because I knew a fact that was out there that 72% of the time that people spend in their day is not at home. So I said, how do you target those people when they're not at home? You got to be creative of what you're doing. So I invested in multiple digital signage companies. But what I noticed was a trend of putting up a screen and just running ads. And that didn't make sense to me. Like if I'm sitting somewhere for 40 minutes, I don't want to see a loop of ads all. I want to be entertained. And so as I sat on the boards of these companies and as an investor, I was like, hey, you got to get content. And I learned out something very quickly. Hardware people don't know much about software. Software people don't know much about hardware. Yep. Neither one of them know anything about content. Yeah. So after years of frustration of trying to get all of them together, a friend of mine said, why do you keep asking somebody else to do something you already know how to do? Why don't you just do it? And that was it. Business plan writing, turned it around, got the advisors that I knew that were in the world, got all that situated because I was in it for 3 years before, and filed the company and launched April of 2016.
And that's Reach TV playing on the screen behind you. That's
correct.
That's
right behind me.
That's it in full flow.
Casually playing behind me.
yeah, exactly. So you talked about the setup, but there must have been a lot of obstacles around that. One of the things we hear in the Black and Brilliant Network is the difficulty of getting funding, financing, and a whole bunch of other hurdles. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the hurdles you faced and how you overcame them?
Yeah, I mean, the blunt part of it is, because I focus on telling people anybody could do anything, and I work with everybody, so it doesn't matter. But when it comes down to the truth of the matter, there's one simple thing when it comes to funding, because I sat on both sides of the table and I've been in the boards of both of them and watched this happen. There seems to be a different set of standards, which is when you're a Black entrepreneur, you're held to prove me that your model, actually you have to prove your model. Yeah. And whereas others get the benefit of the doubt that they built the model and they get a chance, they're funded to go prove that model. We're asked to prove it first. They're given funded to go prove it. That's a big difference. And that happened even to me, which was, you're sitting there watching it. It happened all the time. And you think maybe you're immune to it. It's the exact same thing that happened.
But Lynnwood, can I just jump in there? Because I think that's a subtle point that not everyone in our audience is going to understand. But it's a subtle point, but it's a very important point. Because the guy who gets to, gets given the opportunity to then gets the money, then prove the model, gets a massive advantage in the marketplace. They can make mistakes, they can learn, they can start off with a higher capital base. So what's the difference, which we found as we talked to VCs and entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, particularly Black women entrepreneurs? We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on in Black and Brilliant. What happens when you're not leveraged to the degree you need to be leveraged, and you're in that model where you have to go prove the model before you get the money? What's the implications of that?
The implications are drastic. Number one, you're talking about people risking their life savings. They're not getting paid. You're underfunded, so you're taking shortcuts. You don't have the ability to get the right mentors, the right process. Every single part of that funding process, if everybody was on the same level, would be okay. The problem is when one doesn't have it and the other does, you can't afford to make the same mistakes. And conversely, I will tell you the good side of that. Let me give you the positive side of that I've taken out of that. It makes you do more work. And I know there used to be this thing only in the Black community where we'd say you have to be twice as good to be equal. Yeah. This is part of that, but it's actually good when you're an entrepreneur because it makes you really do the work prior, right? So you really have to get in the work because you're risking everything every time you launch a business.
So that's interesting. So that means if you're a Black entrepreneur, not only you're taking a bigger risk than everybody else, but you also have done all this work in advance, and and that risk is potentially everything you have, just to get to the point of proving the model, whilst your competitor potentially your peer, the non-black peer, is already cooking on gas just before you
Not
even get
only
going.
they're getting a salary, they're already being able to fund it. They're being able to go get the best talent because they're able to pay them. You're not asking people to take things on as a, hey, I'm going to do this later. You're really able to operate the business the way it is. And luckily for me, I was able to fund it myself. I mean, but you start to scale it. We're in 90 airports right now, US, Canada, and now in the UK.
Yeah.
That's not something you could just scale out of your own pocket all the time. So to build it and to prove it, I had to self-fund. Which,
Wow.
you know, what if I couldn't? That would have been another business that should have been launched that was not.
Yeah. And there must be so many stories of people like that. So would you say Reach TV, what's the biggest risk you've taken in your career? Because Reach TV maybe isn't the biggest risk. It's the most recent risk, but
no,
maybe
it's the most recent. The biggest was 1996. I decided I was working, I sold a company. I was a president of the of one division now at the nice job up in North Jersey. And I decided to leave to launch a .com with 6 deals a day. I believed that there was going to be this new thing with the internet, and I could compete with the guys like the CDWs and the PC Connections and the Insight if I just simplified the offering. So people thought I was nuts. I launched it with one of my web guys and a good friend of mine who wanted some business experience, helped me launch. And 18 months later, we were at $40 million in revenue.
Wow.
I hired back all the guys that worked for me before. So it worked out. But
amazing.
That was the biggest risk because within 18 months also I had a son on the way. So it was like a lot of stress.
That's crazy. So where do you get these ideas from? Where do you get your creative inspiration? Because first of all, there's a lot of differences in the things you've done. They're not all they're technology, media, many of them, apart from the knives, but they're all interrelated. But where do you get that inspiration? Because insight seems to be important to you. Where do you spot these?
I look at where there's always, when you launch a business, when entrepreneurs are here to solve problems, right? That's where you launch a business to solve a problem in the marketplace. That's what we do, right? And when I looked out there, I saw that it was really difficult for family members I knew to figure out how to buy a computer. Right? They wanted more of a recommendation engine. And I knew how to do that. And then I knew how to source all the special deals. And at that time, an average computer was $2,000. But if you worked in the world that I did with the excess inventory, I could package things that were $9.99, $14.99, and make an extreme value. And I was doing it for others. I tested it and it worked extremely well. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I doing it for them when I could do it for me? And that's kind of, I always find a way to test my theories out to see if it would work and ask people, experts in that. Sometimes I want them to say, no, it can't be done. So I know I'm on the right track because they have a traditional mindset. I asked them on purpose. I'll give you an example of that just quickly. A friend of mine works at a big cable operator. When I told him I was doing Reach TV, he said, you'll never be able to do that. He'll tell you, I'll let him tell you himself, but he now says, damn, that was the worst advice I gave you. I'm like, no, it was my point. I wanted to hear from you to say, I would never be able to do it because you won't see me coming. And by the time I'm at 90 airports, it's too late, right?
There you go. Boom,
it was kind of
funny. So you got a lot on your plate. I mean, you're a successful entrepreneur. You sit on boards. You got a full family and social life. So both professionally and personally, how do you balance all of these dimensions of your life?
I learned a long time ago, just how I'm wound. I need to do something for myself on a day-to-day basis. And it sounds like sometimes it took me a long time to learn what I'm saying to you. I just did things. I didn't know what was happening. But what happens is when you take care of yourself, it allows you to see everybody else in your ecosystem and think about them as well. But you have to be right mentally and physically so that you can then support your entire team. And so for me, one first thing is I'm a really early riser. I work out in the mornings. I spend time meditating, writing, and then that allows me to give my full attention to the people that are in my life. So whether it's family, whether it's work, I'm able to be there and present. And I think that's one of the biggest things. You can do so many things if you're present in the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's what I focus on, being present in the moment.
That's insightful. That's something I think everybody should understand a little bit more around, because we struggle these days with work-life balance. We struggle kind of being our authentic selves. We struggle living across all the dimensions of life that are important. And actually, maybe and also just keeping healthy. Because frequently when you get busy, it's the first thing that drops off.
First thing that goes off. It's like freshman 15 for a reason, because you get busy when you're in college. All of a sudden you gain all this weight. You're out, you're doing freedom. And I think the working at home, people that never work remote, I've done this multiple times. Yep. What people never realize until now the whole world realizes it. There's no really off and on time.
No.
So you have to set your own boundaries, because otherwise there is none. So you hear people now that are at home for the first time going, I'm never not working, and they can't turn it off.
It's crazy, because somebody said to me the other day, we all used to dream of working from home. Now we're living at work, you know. So it's just we just flipped the naming of it. So I wanted to, you know, obviously we live in, you know, tomorrow, you know, the election we're in the election period right now. By the time this comes out, obviously the election hopefully would have been resolved. But we obviously have recession, you know, economic difficulty out there, COVID-19, Black Lives Matter. Which do you think has been the biggest impact on your business? COVID-19, Black Lives Matter. What external factors do you kind of wake up and think, how am I going to deal with that? Well, that's impacting me.
Well, COVID impacted me particularly because I'm in the travel business, right? In the travel media space. So that was a extreme impact on the business. And we're just recovering from that now, and the impacts of that, because it impacted all parts of the business. For me personally, Black Lives Matter was kind of, as I watched that happen, unfold, it was like, I think the people that I work with that were white or any other race didn't believe the stories. And it was just a validation of the same things I've been telling them has been happening for 20 plus years. And when Wall Street Journal, I had wrote just a Dear America letter that I posted to my Facebook and Instagram. And then Kirk McDonald and some other people were talking about sharing things like this on professional sites as well. Yeah. So I posted to LinkedIn, and overwhelming people all over the walks of life calling me and emailing me, because I just wrote a simple letter of what my life experience was. Yep. And I think sometimes as Black entrepreneurs or people who are Black that are successful in the terms of everybody else's what they get for success, I noticed another trend. We become not Black. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that people understood I'm still Black. Yeah. Just because absolutely. You see me in a suit or you see me over here, doesn't mean my experience is any different than any other person that's Black. And so that's why I wrote the letter. That's what inspired me to write that letter, because I could see the tonal changes in conversations, like them over there, not all of you. And right? At
some point in the future, a historian is going to look at this and then look at that moment and then say, what was the change in belief? Why did it take that video at that time? That wasn't the first video of, you know, I think George Floyd. I think there was a whole bunch wrapped up with COVID, with everyone going through this. I think that was the first video.
I think everybody was home.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody was home. And at the end of the day, we're all human. And it is almost near impossible to see a grown man cry out for his mother while another grown man is on his neck and he's handcuffed. It doesn't matter race. That doesn't matter at that point. It's humanity. You're looking at that going, I can't look away from it, and I wish I never saw it. But now that I saw it, I can't. That genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. And that, I think that was like it was pent up. And that was just like, it can't be stopped anymore.
Yeah, that's enough.
And I think, you know, from my family that marched and protested to people that were asked questions, I think there's one thing that bothers me a little bit about the whole movement is, you know, I've never met anybody from Black Lives Matter organization. Mm-hmm. To this day, I've never met anybody from it, nor do it. That's not the motivation. As Black as I am, my life
Yeah.
matters. That's it. The name is meant to be about the fact that our lives matter, not about an organization. And I think that was the beauty of the whole movement, is it didn't reside with one person or one organization or anything. It was a statement of fact. And I think that was the powerful part about it. Even listen to Dave Chappelle talk about it. It was kind of funny. Just the power of the people really spoke. And I think people were just, it was inspiring, to say the least.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to kind of end on a really positive note, because I think just hearing what you talked about, your childhood, your granddad riding in the back of that truck. If the 10-year-old Lynnwood Bibbens could look at you today, okay, what would you say to him, and what advice would you give him, if any?
You know, it's funny because when I wrote it, when I was thinking about that, about 5 different images came to my head, right? Riding on the back of that truck, at the time being embarrassed because I played with some of these same guys.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be on the garbage truck. But now telling myself now is like, you're learning a valuable lesson. And I think I always say this when people ask me questions like that is, I have this one saying from my grandmother was, this too shall pass. And I always looked at that as a way to get over things pretty quickly and to compartmentalize them so that nothing holds me back. I also think that it was instilled to me that I could do anything.
Yep.
Right. And now we used to always laugh. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Yeah. So I always had this belief that was kind of together, which was I could do anything, but it's going to be hard. You know, and so if I would say my advice to myself is to keep instilling that even earlier. And my advice to anybody is, yes, all of us can do anything we want to do. Side note, it's going to be hard. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lynnwood, thank you so much for this. This episode of Get to Know is at an end. If you didn't know Lynnwood Bibbens, now you know. If you don't know, now you know. So Lynnwood, a big thank you from you, from all of us at Black and Brilliant, for your continued support and advocacy. So we see you, we know what you're doing and how you're helping out from the very beginning of this movement. And to our audience, thank you so much for spending time with us. And remember to check this out and other interviews on LinkedIn, YouTube, and on our website, blackandbrilliant.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.